From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan.
Cock-blocking magicians?
Today with retired New York City police detective and author Vic Ferrari to talk about his new book, Grand Theft Auto, the NYPD's Auto Crime Division. Remember, if you've got a tip for Melissa on anything, tell us about it by calling the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837. Or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. You just might hear your tip on the podcast. And now here's your host. She's got more true crime in her blood than blood has DNA. Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell. More true crime in my blood than my blood's got DNA.
Yeah.
That's going to be a great blues song. I'm going to write that right now.
I got more blood in my DNA.
No true crime in my DNA. No. Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Something like that.
All right.
Right now I'm not going to even talk about my ability to write a song because it's really gone downhill in the last 10 seconds.
Oh.
So
I don't know. I think you've got pretty good chops for it.
No, I don't. Not at all. And you and I have had long discussions about the difference between poetry and songs.
Oh, no, we're not going to get into that, are we?
I think
we are, I guess.
Songs are poems. Anyway, so
no,
we'll just...
songs are not poems. Songs are songs.
All right, then.
Songs are not music. They are not poetry. Songs are songs.
Poetry.
They are an art form unto themselves.
They are, but some song lyrics are poems.
No, and you wouldn't think. Never mind.
All right,
we will have a treatise.
Do you want to just? I'm going to set up a boxing ring in the backyard, and we're gonna settle this once and for all.
And no, because you'd kick the shit out of me. I don't want to do that.
I probably wouldn't.
Yeah, no.
But I have a mean left hook, but I can't duck for shit, and I have a glass jaw.
Yeah, well, I can't swing for shit, so I probably...
All right, then maybe I will win.
I'd probably swing and, punch the barbecue gazebo or something.
We don't want that, because I remember when you put that together, one of the few times in our time together, I heard... I didn't even hear you. You told me you cried.
Yes.
You were like... It took you two different days.
Yep.
You spent many hours on a Saturday, and then you stopped probably when you started crying.
Well, I was a typical... guy. It said when
to
you
ask for help.
Well, when you opened the box,
two-person
job,
job,
all caps in bold type with exclamation points. This is a 2-person job. I was like, I can do it.
Yeah, fuck it. That's my boy. That's
I ended up
me
doing
too.
it though.
How many times have I called you crying? Mark, can you help me? I'm stuck on the stairs trying to carry an ottoman up. Yeah. So we're both like stubborn assholes who think we can do everything ourselves.
Right. Well.
So that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay.
So in the intro, when I said cock-blocking magicians,
yes,
it's because our guest in this episode said that. I think it was after we stopped recording.
No, I don't.
It wasn't?
Think so. I think
because we ended up talking to him.
Oh, it was after. That's right. It was after.
We ended up talking to him for like 25 minutes after we'd stopped recording.
After we'd stopped recording, yeah.
Because he's just such a natural storyteller, and he was, and that was the thing that I actually wrote it down because I didn't want to. Anyway, so I'll explain. His name is Vic Ferrari, and he was a 20-year officer at with the NYPD. He did different things. He did narcotics and different divisions, but the last 10 years of his career he spent in the Grand Theft Auto area, and he has written several books, and they're funny and smart and weird, just like him. And he had, just like him, really.
Right.
And he had reached out to me via, I think, Twitter. And at first I thought, why would I want to talk to a retired NYPD officer about Grand Theft Auto? I don't, and then I start looking into him and doing some research, and I hear another interview, and I'm like, well, he's such a natural storyteller. And then I look up his other books on Amazon. I'm like, this guy's awesome. And we're absolutely going to talk to him about his newest book, even though it's Grand Theft Auto, because he has so many amazing cop stories. We're going to have him back on at some other point. He was regaling us with some of, every police officer with a long career especially has stories of, the way Vic had voiced it in another interview. He said you get like you get a front row seat for humanity. So you get to see the best of people who help other people, which he explains one of the reasons he wanted to become an officer was his grandfather, his 80-year-old grandfather, had fallen and broken his leg, and these two cops were on each side of his grandfather carrying him home to get, to the hospital. So, I mean, it's, you see the best and a lot of the worst, I'm sure, of humanity. But he had some great stories, but his Grand Theft Auto stories are what we're talking about, mostly because of his new book.
It's called Grand Theft Auto, the NYPD's Auto Crime Division.
Yeah, and that's where he spent the last 10 years of his career. But one of the stories he was telling us about was going into a cop bar when he's in his 20s with his partner, and there was another cop who was a magician part-time. And that guy would show up, when other cops were talking to two pretty girls and start pulling quarters out of people's ears and roses out of his butthole, and he called them, he's like, I was being cocked blocked by a magician, and I literally thought I was going to lose control of my bowels. So, having managed comedy clubs, my least favorite acts were the magicians. I'm so sorry, Phil Van T, because I love you, and I dated Obadiah.
Well, I also lived in a
oh my God, you too. That's right.
In Hollywood, where everybody there worked at the Magic Castle, and they were some of the nicest people in the world.
Oh, they are. Magicians are typically the best human beings because they're interesting and they have this weird quirk, and they, they're interesting human beings. I just don't give a shit about magic. Sorry.
Right.
But the fact that he was cock blocked by a magician, I was like, oh dude, you gotta up the level of chicks you're trying to get.
Yeah. Well,
sorry.
I don't know. I think chicks like magicians. They do.
Maybe.
I know the one guy
weird.
in my building that, he wasn't the best looking guy in the world.
If you're talking about Joe Monty, he's fucking cute.
No, I'm not talking about Joe Monty. I'm talking about somebody else.
Okay.
Who was not the greatest looking guy in the world, but he always had
hot and cold running girls.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because he pulled roses out of his butthole for him.
See, that's probably what
you
did
get tired of the quarter out of the ear, like any grandpa can do that, but the roses out of the butthole. I mean,
right,
that's
exactly.
It reminds me of that Outcast song. I know you like to think your shit don't stink, but lean a little bit closer, see roses really smell like boo-boo. Sorry, I gotta stop myself. By the way, that's my next karaoke.
Oh my God.
Love that song with all my heart.
Oh my God. So the thing that I liked about Vic, and the listeners will hear this, is that he had, like you say, every cop has stories.
Sure.
But this guy's just a natural. He ought to have his own podcast.
He should.
I mean, he's just a natural.
I think he's more interested in writing. And I'll tell you why, because I like I said, I've heard other interviews with him, and I love his process. So, and what he also is generous with information, and that it's like, look, if you are a writer trying to, and he explained in other interviews, he tried lots of different ways, different publishers, and, they want to take too much of the profit off the top. And, when you're just starting, it's a difficult thing. So he, I guess, self-published probably, but, put them out on Amazon, and that's where everyone finds things usually.
That's right.
And he explained a company in Canada that, because his book covers are hilarious. And, he said they do a lot for you. He explained, I can't remember the name of it.
Dickheads and Debauchery.
No, not the title of the book. The company in Canada.
Oh, okay.
Like e-commerce or something. Anyway, he explains it. You'll hear it in the podcast if you're looking to start a writing career on your own. But he said, I don't do things chronologically. Like, he seems like he's the kind of guy that needs someone to follow him around with like a legal pad and a pen and just let him dictate stories, and they just need to write it all down for him. But he does that himself. Like, he doesn't have someone who does that for him, but he doesn't write things in like, well, this happened in January and this happened in February. He doesn't do them in chronological order, but I'm sure he has an editor who puts things, together in a cohesive way. But it's, a collection of stories in different parts of his career. And the Grand Theft Auto, the new one, is just coming out, I guess, in June.
It just came out, yeah, right.
Yeah, it just came out like June 15th, I think.
Right, June 15th.
Yeah, so we were just happy to have him on. He's a natural storyteller. And, life is very heavy right now. And we sometimes need something a little lighter. And this is one of those instances where we were happy to talk about something a little lighter than what we typically talk about. So we hope you enjoyed this interview with Vic Ferrari. This episode is a little different than most of the episodes of Just the Tip-Sters. We have a fantastic retired police officer from the NYPD who is a hilarious author and an interesting fellow at that. So welcome, Vic Ferrari. How are you doing today?
Hi, Melissa. Thank you for having me on your show.
I am so happy you're here because it's a very different kind of thing than we normally do. But when I started looking into the books that you've written, I became like even more fascinated. But let's kind of go backward and let's talk about how you got into law enforcement. So you're this kid from the Bronx and your parents are like, please don't go into law enforcement. And you're like, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I mean, short of beating it out of me, I mean, they couldn't. When I was a little boy, I saw my grandfather broke his leg in the snow, and these two cops brought him home. And I was about 5 years old, and these two guys in blue were carrying this 80-year-old man, and I'm like, who are these guys? What do they eat? How do they do this? I was fascinated. And then, as a little boy, the first thing you do is you gravitate towards that gun, and I'm staring at it like, oh, wow. I mean, you play Cowboys and Indians with your brother with your finger, and this guy's got the real deal. So a couple of years later, my mother was taking my brother and I to the movie theater, and I saw a police car. And I pulled out of her hand, and I ran towards the police precinct. I ran through 2 lanes of traffic and ran up to a police car. And, I mean, my mother was no joke.
Right.
I mean, my mother was old school, my father, too. I mean, if you got out of line, you were going to get it. And she comes running over with my brother, and the cops saw what was going to happen to me. And they're like, no, it's all right. Don't worry. They put me in the radio car. They put the hat on me and everything. So they disarmed my mother. They diffused the situation, which was cool.
Wow.
And every time we went up Tremont Avenue, I saw that police station. I had to go there.
Oh, that's kind of amazing to know at such a young age. I mean, a lot of kids are like, I want to be a veterinarian when I grow up because I love animals. But I feel like that sometimes things are implanted in us at a young age, and it's our path. It's where we're supposed to be. And obviously it was already there in you, and you were going to do it, come hell or high water. So your folks are trying to talk you out of it, but you're finally like, nope, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I went to an all-boys Catholic high school in the Bronx, and back then to get into a Catholic high school was like the NFL draft. So the combine was you had to take a test in 8th grade, and then the Catholic high schools would bring you in and interview you, and by your grades. And so anyway, I went to a Catholic high school, all boys, and it was almost like the way Penn State is known for producing linebackers. My high school was known for producing cops, and my graduating class of about 200 boys, I'd say about 40 became NYPD members.
Wow.
And then I'm not even counting the year before, the year after. It just, back then, in the 80s, you could still make it in life without having to go to college. Not that you can't make it in life now without a degree, but it's more difficult.
Absolutely.
But back then, you could still make it in life being a cop, a fireman, a lineman, before they broke up the phone company.
Right.
So there were different opportunities back then, and I had no interest in going to college. And, I mean, my parents really wanted me to go, but I did everything. I dragged my feet because I knew what I wanted to do. And I remember my father coming to me one day and saying, hey, look, I know you want to be a cop and everything, but you're out of high school now. You got to get a job. You got to do something. And I said, yeah, okay. And I went from menial job to menial job and was an exterminator. I cleaned airplanes at LaGuardia Airport. I unloaded trucks for UPS. I must have been a nightmare for the woman that was doing my background check because, I mean, I had all these crazy jobs because I would just get bored. It was like, catch me if you can.
You're right.
Because I would literally walk into these jobs and say I had experience or give different references, and then they'd find out either if they liked me, they'd keep me, or if they found out I was lying, they'd fire me. So, but when the NYPD called in the mid-'80s, I mean, I just jumped on the train and away I went.
And how many years did you have at the NYPD?
I did exactly 20 years.
Wow. Exactly 20 years. So here you are doing, and from what I can understand, by the way, your interview on criminal justice evolution got me to subscribe to that podcast. And I'm mentioning at the beginning in the intros and outros of the show some podcasts I enjoy, and I really like kind of the behind the scenes one. And your interview on CJ Evolution was a really great one, really fun and thoughtful and interesting. But you mentioned that you had done, time in the narcotics division. And I loved the fact that you did dignitary protection. You're like backing up, people from other countries who are visiting or dignitaries, and you're working alongside Secret Service. And then you end up in auto theft. Is that like the department that was the most interesting to you?
That was my calling. Like, I worked in a lot of different places, but my last 10 years I worked in the auto crime division. Now, the dignitary protection thing is in the auto crime division, you would go for specialized training for dignitary protection, and then when the president came into town,
right,
or foreign heads of state, it was almost like Mission Impossible. You get this. It really, if anyone's ever, I'm talking about the television show with Peter Graves.
Right.
You would come into work one day and you'd get a notification that say, tomorrow, 0500 hours, which is 5 a.m. It took me a while to get military time, too.
Right.
Report to the BAT, which is the Brooklyn Army Terminal. So I lived in the Bronx. I'd get up. I'd be in a suit and a tie. I'd drive all the way, in the dark, drive all the way out to Brooklyn. And you're in the middle of nowhere. It's the Brooklyn Navy Yard. It's a vast, it looks like a wasteland. You go into this building, a sergeant checks your ID, you're paired up with another guy you've never met before, right? They give you a folder. It gives you the dignitary's name. It gives you a specialized radio. You might get a pin, like a Secret Service pin or a State Department pin. You get a car, and you're told, here's a phone number. Go down to the Plaza Hotel. Just get, for argument's sake, the Benjamin Netanyahu is staying at the Plaza Hotel with two of his Secret Service guys from the Shin Bet, which those guys are no joke. Those are Israeli guys. We used to call them commandos in suits. Go down there, call this guy, and meet up with him. And you'd meet up with these people, and for the day, you were assigned to them.
Right.
You walk around with the dark glasses and get out with the suit and the whole 9 yards. And it was fun. It was interesting, too, because you got to see how powerful people were, like Netanyahu, for argument's sake. Gentlemen. That guy, I'll tell you something. I've been with a lot of people like him, and he was just the real deal, like a nice guy. We went to some restaurant. He was meeting somebody, and we were sitting at the next table. It was the kind of place on Fifth Avenue where a bowl of soup is like $40. And he came over to our table, and he goes, guys, lunch is on me, and don't just get a salad. And I had never been treated like that in my life. Like, I've been with guys, like in my book, I said, we were with the president of Slovenia. How much the president of Slovenia makes, I have no idea, but I watched him spend like $20,000 on suits and hand-painted ties on a shopping spree and got on a plane and went back to Slovenia. They must really dress well over there.
Yeah.
I mean, this is 20-something years ago, but, I mean, you just got to see a different side of people. Like, you're watching TV and these people at the UN. I'll give you another guy, Baki Moon, the guy that was in charge of the UN for a while, the guy from Korea. We met him on an Amtrak train. He got off at Penn Station. He was running. I never met a guy that walked that fast in my life. I mean, to keep up with this guy, this guy was, it was like a marathon. We were going place to place to place to place. I was like, is he on a scavenger hunt? Like, why does he keep going all these places? Like, we must have visited 20 places. But you get to see, the masters of the universe, how they act and behave.
Yeah, and your job is to kind of be invisible, but your job is extremely important. I know producer Mark had an event in, was it Iowa, Mark?
Oh yeah.
So that you mentioned the Plaza Hotel, was it President Bush?
It was George W. Bush. It was in 2002. It was the midterm elections, and he was on the campaign trail for the House and Senate candidates. And I was at the time touring as a singer-songwriter, and I just so happened to be staying in.
Remember Priceline? How you could get great hotels for like $1.50.
I happened to get a room at the hotel.
The
downtown.
Crown or something.
Yeah, I think it was the
Crown Plaza.
They had it was in I can't remember the name of the city.
Is it Des Moines?
It wasn't Des Moines, but anyway, I got there late because I'd had dinner with somebody else in another part of Iowa, and I got there late, and it was starting to snow. And unfortunately, I showed up like I didn't know what was happening. There was a convention center attached to the
He was doing a
hotel.
breakfast the next day.
Yeah, he was doing at the convention center that was down below where the hotel is. I didn't know that, and I showed up, and there were snow tractors blocking off all of the entrances, and I managed to find a way to get into the parking garage, but I managed to get somebody to help me get all my stuff up to my room just before he showed up, and it was like being in one of those long tracking shots in the West Wing. It's like it was loaded. Secret Service were everywhere, dogs everywhere, and everything was moving fast. They like moved me along like I was like you said, I was running to get to my room, with my stuff.
To get him locked in.
To get me locked in because they locked down all the guests in the hotel were locked down until
6 a.m. or something.
Until, the Eagle landed and was up in his room, And I couldn't do anything until the next morning. It was
he
really
called me. He called me and he's like, "It's really weird. The president's here." And I'm like, "What?" It was like, yeah. He's like, "I can't leave my room." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I hope you have everything you need. Good night."
Right.
The Secret Service is very good at what they do.
Yeah,
They've
and
worked
that's
with a lot of different
exactly.
law enforcement agencies, and they're top shelf, and they're just very dedicated and good people.
That's the thing is that the next morning, Mark said, he did a breakfast meeting at the convention center, and they were up and gone, and you would never know they were there.
Yeah, it was an early 8 a.m. thing that he did. I woke up at around 9:30 in the morning because I stayed up late working, and I went to bed. I got up at 9:30, and I looked out the window. Everything was gone. Nothing.
It was like they were never there.
It was like, right. Everything was back to normal.
It's a
insane.
fascinating thing. I thought the dignitary protection part, which I would never think of someone, in NYPD, all the things you do that back up other things. You already have enough to do in your own career, but then you have that. So you end up the last 10 years working in the auto theft division, and you retire, and it's like, I feel like you put out a book a year. Are you just like so prolific, or there's just so many stories that you have to just keep remembering them and getting them down on paper?
I don't know if I'm prolific. I came up with the idea of writing about 4 or 5 years ago, and you are right. I'm putting out about a book a year.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's like, I'll start writing a story, right? And I have so many of my friends that are cops up in New York and retired all over the country now. And, we're just talking, and one guy will say something, and I'll go, "Oh, I forgot about that guy. Remember when he did this? Or remember when he did this?" I give you an example. Like, so my last book, the NYPD's Flying Circus, a buddy of mine, we were talking about a guy we both knew, and we used to call the guy El Diablo.
Right.
Because when guys worked with this guy when he was a cop, they either got a divorce and went to the farm, which is the alcohol center where cops get in trouble, or they converted to Christianity. Because, the guy was just such a partier. So anyway, the guy is in a Midtown bar, and he's drinking with these two floozies that he picks up. They might have even been hookers, who knows. And while they're in the bar, and this is like down in Midtown, well, over by Central Park, one of the handsome cab operators, when you go for a ride in Central Park on a horse and carriage, the guy comes walking in with a top hat to use the bathroom. So El Diablo's drunk. He comes up with the idea. He tells, "Hey, lady, you want to go for a ride?"
Oh, no.
Go, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Yeah,
no.
I know that guy. Come on."
Oh, no.
Well, it's in the book. Long story short, he gets that horse and carriage moving,
Oh, no.
and they're almost remote control because the horses know where to go.
Right.
But when the horse figured out that he wasn't supposed to be driving it,
Oh, no.
the horse took off to Central Park and was going to cut through the park to get to the barns on the west side. Well, then the other Hanson cab drivers see it, and they see that there's a runaway horse. So now it turns into like the Trotters racetrack. So now they're chasing him through Central Park, and he can't stop the horse.
Oh, no.
So they finally get him maneuvered. When you think of Central Park in the winter, you think of, what was that, all the movies that were filmed there, Home Alone and stuff. Yeah, and this idiot has got a stolen stagecoach with two floozies in it, and he's riding through Central Park. So finally, long story short, they get it stopped. Right? Anyone else would have gotten suspended in trouble.
Right.
The two floozies took off. He runs to an ATM machine and pulls out $500 to make amends. By the time the cops get there, no one wants to get involved with it, and he lived on to another day. He's retired, and I don't know what he's doing now, but how that guy did 20 years. But
sometimes money talks.
Like, you know, like, yeah, it's just
Grease
so funny.
the wheel.
Like, I'm talking to one of my friends, and I'll just come up with an idea for a story. You know, like, remember that guy? And you know, sometimes it's something that they'll say that triggers it, or I start talking and I remember a guy, and then it just, you know, comes up with a funny story.
Well, I was looking, you know, I know the Grand Theft Auto is your newest book, which we'll talk about, but I kind of wanted to, I know you don't like chronological order, which is another thing I adore about you, is that you don't write in a style like that, which I think the best writers probably don't. You start with what a story, just the first story that you're thinking of, and you write it down, and then, you know, things fill in from there. But chronologically, the title of your first book from 2016, Dickheads and Debauchery, I thought was fucking hilarious. And the cover...
That is a great title.
It's fucking hilarious. And it's about weird ways to die and fucked up shit people do. And the thing that made me laugh so hard is that the cover is a man on a ladder, and his ladder is on top of 2 cinder blocks, and he's smoking a cigarette. And here's the fucking thing that I was like, God damn this Vic, he's in my brain. When we first bought this house, it's a 2-story house, and we have kind of a curved staircase to go up to the second floor. And Melissa, the dumbass, wanted to paint one wall a different color, and Mark was at work, and I put our ladder on top of dictionaries and books and just fucking stupid shit. And our handyman was like, please don't do this again. Please don't do this again. Please let me do. And I fucked it up a little bit, and he came with a real ladder like that a normal person would use, and put it in the hallway and touched up the parts that I missed because I was like wobbling. And I don't think I ever told you that, did I, Mark?
I'm sitting here with my jaw on the ground.
I did a lot of shit.
What the fuck?
When you were at work that I should not have done. And then I see the cover of Vic's book, and I'm like, holy crap, I could have been a statistic.
I would have killed you all over again.
You would have killed me all over again.
If you had died.
Yeah. So that's...
The book cover, so I had the title.
One of the best book covers I've ever seen, I have to say.
Well, there's a company in Canada called, for new authors out there, if you're thinking about getting a book off the ground, they're almost like one-stop shopping. They'll design a great cover for you. They'll edit your book for you. They'll format it when it gets uploaded into Kindle. They're called ebooklaunch.com. But anyway, so you fill out a form, what you want for your book cover. You give the name of the title, what's the book about. So the guy gets back to me and he goes, I don't know what you want. I go, I want a guy doing something dangerous, right? So he gets back. He goes, I don't know what you want. I said, all right, put a fat guy with a wife beater, drinking a beer, smoking a cigarette on top of a ladder, doing something. Put the ladder on top of like cinder blocks or a picnic table. I said, and then have him doing something electrical. And he goes, I got it. And that's, you got that.
It was
cover.
perfect.
I mean,
it was perfect.
I have nothing. All I do is provide the insight to these guys, and on all 4 of my book covers, I've never once said, "No, that's not." Maybe I'm easy to please.
They're terrific,
but they've always come through.
Yeah, they're terrific. That's really nice of you to plug them, because that's a really good resource for, as you say, if you want to, get a book off the ground. That's a really good thing to know. And all of your book covers are so captivating. That's you get almost a macro image of what you're trying to say with just the cover, and I think that's pretty rare that somebody gets it right in one picture. You get an overview of what it's about, and then you can get into the meat of the book. So that was 2016. 2018 is NYPD Through the Looking Glass. 2019 is NYPD's Flying Circus. Hilarious titles and really great covers. And then your newest one is Grand Theft Auto, NYPD's Auto Crime Division. And at first I thought, everyone's seen, Gone in 60 Seconds or, Tokyo Drift or something. But I hadn't thought about the fine points of auto theft and auto crime and how fascinating it can be. And one of the things you said in the interview with Patrick Fitzgibbons in crime, criminal justice evolution was that, crime does pay when it comes to cars. It's like, it's a whole machine.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing to hear some of the stories. And when you said when you first started, I pay a little, I'm a car person myself. I love cars, old muscle cars and etc. And some of the things that you have mentioned, which are funny, I pay attention to the cars that are most stolen on the most stolen list, because I usually have had one or two at the time. I was a big Toyota Celica fan, but the Honda Civic and the Honda Accord were always the top of the list when I was paying attention. And you you mentioned that, like, depending on who the person is, they can steal a Toyota with a pair of scissors.
The older ones, yeah, the older Toyotas, the ignitions were so just easy to break and manipulate. So several times you'd see somebody driving around with them. They would use. I'm not talking about like this pair of scissors you'd see today. I'm talking about like the ones you would cut fabric, like the ones your mom would have,
right,
or your grandmother would have. Like, you could kill somebody with those things.
Right.
Like 4 pounds. And they just shove it in that ignition, boy, and grab the other hand and just crack it.
Wow.
And, yeah.
Yeah, and you said
the older ones.
And those were the cars that were typically the ones most stolen because of the parts. Like, they could be taken apart quickly. They were like the best-selling cars. So after a couple of years, people needed parts. So they were the most stolen cars, and they were, just gone from your driveway before you knew what happened. And I had no idea why it was so easy. And you said some GM cars were easily lifted with a screwdriver. It's like, I just assume you have to be some sort of a criminal mastermind, but you're telling me not really, in the old ones for sure.
Well, back in my time in the 80s and 90s. So you had so the more there is of something car-wise, the more there's going to be accidents.
Right.
The more there's going to be a demand for parts, the more they're going to get stolen. Right. So the average family either has a Camry or a Honda Accord, nothing flashy, but a nice 4-door, reliable. I can get 200,000 miles out of this thing if I change the oil, right?
Right, your average sedan, yeah.
Right, so they're getting into accidents, right? And usually the accidents, it's the front end of the car, right? So you're talking headlights, you're talking the radiators, the front bumpers. There's you need parts for it. So if a guy can, if your body shop is getting the parts, he's sending out a couple of kids, and he's paying them a couple of $100, and he's charging you $1,500 for parts, and he paid $200 for the parts. That's money going right in his pocket.
Right.
And in the old days, in New York, you had the gypsy cabs, which a gypsy cab is a 4-door car that basically they would hang around the bus stops and they'd hang around the train stations, and they would pick people up. We call dollar cabs. So those cars were usually 4-door cars. What they would do with those is they would steal Cadillacs, Oldsmobiles, Buicks, big 4-door cars, and they would change the vehicle identification numbers.
Wow.
So say, for argument's sake, a guy's got a gypsy cab and he crashes it or the engine blows, so he's not going to buy another one. He's just going to take his VIN number out of the window and steal another one.
Oh, my gosh.
Slap it on there and drive it around. And we used to pick them off. Like in my book, I said back in the day it was like wild buffalo roaming the plain. I mean, it was just like an unlimited supply. You could do that all day long if you wanted.
I had no idea you could remove a VIN number and attach it to another car. I had no idea.
Oh, that's a tremendous market. See,
wow.
In the old days,
the VINs are on like metal plates,
right? A little metal plate.
Well, the older ones were.
Ah.
Okay, if you look nowadays, right, they're digitally scanned or etched. So I'll give you an example. Let's just say, for argument's sake, you want a BMW. What kind of car would you want? If you could have any car right now, what would you want?
I have a Cadillac SRX, and I love it with all my heart. So I don't want another one.
Let's say she wants a brand new 2020 Cadillac SRX.
Well, they don't make them now. They make the STX. But okay, let's just say that.
All right, you're making it too complicated. Let's just say for argument's sake, the two of you wanted a 5 Series BMW.
Sure.
Right?
I do.
Okay. And let's just say, for argument's sake, right? I'm out of the business right now, but let's just say, for argument's sake, a brand new or a couple of year old 5 Series is $45,000, right?
Right.
So you come to me and you go, I really want that car, and I say, all right, I'll tell you what, that car goes for $45,000. Give me $10,000, I'll get you one. Really? Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll go to an auction, right? I'll go to an auto auction with a buddy of mine who's got a second-hand or a dealer's license. I'll go to an auction and I'll buy a wrecked, like got hit by a school bus and burst into flames, 5 Series BMW, right? For $3,000. Now, everybody's in on it because the thing is useless except for the vehicle identification number. It's not even really rebuildable. Okay?
All right.
So I'm going to take that wreck for $3,000, and I'm going to take the VIN number. Let's say, just say for argument's sake, the VIN number survived and a couple of the stickers survived. I take all that off. I take the title, right? Then what I do is I pay a kid $500 to steal a 5 Series, right? He steals a 5 Series, and how we used to catch them is they would get a year or two off, or the color would be off, but there's ways around that too.
Uh-huh.
And then what you do is, let's just say for argument's sake, it comes in on a salvage title. Oh, shit, when I go to DMV, they're going to want to look at this. No. What we'll do is I'm going to mail the title up to New Jersey where they don't have a vehicle salvage program, and we're going to register it for a day at my cousin's house.
Oh, my God.
Your cousin takes the title, he walks it into DMV and registers the car. What do? They take that title and they give him a New Jersey title that's clean. Then they take the Jersey title, send it down to Florida. Car never leaves. The wreck and the car that's going to get tagged never leaves, but the paperwork is bouncing around state.
Right.
So for those of you that are listening out there, if you go on Carfax, right, and you're looking at a used car, and you see that car maybe hasn't been in an accident, but it's fairly new, within 5 years old, and it's been titled in several different states, it's a red flag. That's not to say people don't move and take their cars with them.
Sure.
But if you're starting to see it was titled here, and then within 3 months it was titled there, and then it's here,
Yeah.
Also, if you see a car, what are the odds of a car in San Diego, California, winding up in New York City? What they're doing now is they're not even buying salvage vehicles. What they're doing is it's a technique called cloning. So let's just say, for argument's sake, I have you in California take a photo of a vehicle identification number of a car in a parking lot that I want to steal. You send me that VIN number. Then I go to somebody with a scanner and create the paperwork and the VIN number for that. Then what I'll do is I'll steal that car and I'll use that clone VIN and slap it on there. Now, 2 vehicle identification numbers cannot be on the same car.
Right.
So if you're on Carfax or whatever these search engines now, a car can't be in the same place. So if you see a car that's active in one state and it's in front of you that you see on Craigslist, walk or call the cops and have them take a look at it.
Aha. Okay. I was going to ask, what's the best way to protect our cars? But, things are different now with key fobs and valet keys and things like that. I mean, I guess we have more things in place now to protect them, but I guess it's still a big business, huh?
It is. I mean, it's definitely gotten more difficult to steal a car, and you're 100% right with a lot of these key fobs and electronic ignitions, and it's definitely more difficult. But one way that people get their cars stolen, they don't even realize it. When you don't valet park your car, and if you do valet park your car, I'm going to give you some tips. So, never leave your registration.
You said that. Tell me that.
Your insurance card. Anything in there that's going to tell the guy that's parking your car and is going to have it for a few hours where you live.
Okay.
Okay, so A, he knows where you live, so he can send somebody there. B, if you have a high-end car, they usually give you that leather-bound book.
Right.
Take that thing out of the car, okay? Because
Oops.
Usually in those things, there's a code, to cut a key, or there's a valet key in there, or a spare key.
Right.
And what they'll do is, you've never opened that thing up since you bought the car. They know where it is. They take it out. They've got your address. And in a month or two, they send their buddy, or they go over and they take it.
Oh, gosh. Okay. I had not thought about that. I thought a valet key somehow, protected you against some things, but now you're making me think, oh man, I feel like a dummy. Because I have my entire life been taught, keep your registration in the car. In fact, it was my grandfather would put mine in a plastic Ziploc bag in case, it got wet or whatever to protect it. So don't keep your registration in your car. Just keep it like on your person in your wallet or something.
I would,
Yeah.
and I would avoid. I get that, sometimes you have to valet park a car. You
Right.
go into this restaurant that you love, and they're a real pain in the ass, and
Right.
they just, there's no wherever you're going. I get it. It happens. I've had to do it, and it's like I'm a nervous wreck until I get the keys back.
Right.
But I mean, it is more difficult to steal a car. But I'll give you an example. Like in this new book, Grand Theft Auto, we locked up a guy. I got a phone call from the service manager at the BMW flagship dealership in Manhattan, and he says, there's this guy that's been coming in over the last couple of months. He says he's a car dealer, and he has keys cut for cars that he buys at auction that sometimes don't come with the keys. And I said, okay. He says, well, the problem is he came in today to get a key cut for a car. He says, but that car is actually in here getting an oil change. I said, oh, that takes balls. I said, I'll tell you what. I said, whose name are on the title, right, of these keys? He goes, well, he always produces a title that's in his name, he says, and a New Jersey driver's license in his name. Now, if you've ever purchased a car from a car dealer, rarely, if ever, it's titled to them. When a car dealer buys a car at auction, they're not going to take the time to title it. It takes too much time. They have what's called a second-hand dealer's license that enables them to sell it to a third party.
Okay.
Like you or I sell a car. If I sell you my car, my name has to be on the back. It has to be on the front of it. And then I sign it and date it on the back. And then you sign it and date it in the back. We hand it in the DMV.
Right.
And it comes back. You get a clean title. A brand new car dealership doesn't give you a title. They give you what's called a certificate of origin, which is from the manufacturer.
Right.
And you take that to DMV, and then they give you a title.
Right.
So what this guy was doing was he lived in a high-rise apartment complex in New Jersey. And what he would do is he would go into the basement. He'd write down the vehicle identification number of a vehicle he wanted to steal. He'd have his friend print up a bogus title. And then with his driver's license, he would cross the Hudson River, go into the BMW dealership, and have a key cut.
Oh, my God.
Then he would go back and steal their cars. So I says, well, I says, do me a favor. I go, fax me every title he's presented to get a key. So we were up to like 7, 8 cars. I said, okay.
Wow.
So what I did was I told him, I said, tell this guy, I says, to come in on Monday to pick up his key. And then I pretended, me and my partner got behind the counter, and we pretended to be BMW employees. And when he came in, he throws the title at me, and and $100, and I'm making change for him. And long story short, we lock him up, and then I'm going through his pockets, and I find titles and paperwork to Mercedes.
Oh, my.
So we go over to Mercedes, and he's doing the same thing. So he got I think about 4 years in jail for that.
Wow. Yeah, that actually doesn't even seem like enough, but I guess, it's just, I think about people like this and people who, hack into credit cards and shit. And I think, you're smart. If you used your fucking brain power for good, you could probably cure cancer. But no, you want to fucking figure out ways to get keys cut for luxury cars that you're going to steal. I mean, it's just, I don't know why.
Oh, yeah, or secret compartments in cars, like the drug dealers. We would find these secret compartments. I mean, anywhere you could think of in a car, they would hollow out a compartment, and it was elaborate shit. Like, you couldn't open that compartment unless you had to figure out the wiring. I mean, sometimes it's electronic. Oh, yeah, on pistons. So you'd have to put the car in reverse with the air conditioner on and hit the hazard light, and then the dash would lift, right? I'm not kidding. Or the trunk would lift, a compartment, the trunk would lift, or a panel would pop open. And it was funny because we would recover these stolen cars, right, that were tag jobs where the vehicle identification number was changed. And we call the owner up who got their car stolen 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and they've long forgotten their car, right?
Right.
And you'd call them up, and it would be funny watching Granny driving out of the parking lot, right, with like a boombox system in the car that could make your ears bleed. But one time, this little old lady came, they gave her a car, but her car was stolen for years. She got her car back, and a couple of weeks later, she must, like I said, put the car in reverse, and she hit the right sequence.
Oh, my God.
And she walked into the precinct with a Mac 10 and a half a kilo of heroin. that was in the car. Like,
right.
Like, why would I come in with, like, they opened the box up, like, why would I bring this in here? Like, she had the voucher and everything, and, she explained what happened. But.
Wow. I mean, I guess I never thought of the fascinating things that people can do to cars, to rig them for their own purposes. It's so, you must have seen so many amazing things in your career that is one of the reasons you write these books, which, the rest of us aren't going to know unless you tell us, because you are such a fantastic and authentic storyteller. So what are the things we can do to protect our own cars from assholes like that?
Well, I mean, if the reality is, if they really want to get your car, they're going to tow it. So, like I put in my book, unless you have an armed guard outside your garage,
right.
It's in play. But don't make it easy for them. And like I said, I know people hate car alarms. It's a pain in the ass when that thing goes off, and you got to look out your window and shut it off. But like I write in the book, you got to see the look on the guy's face that tries the door handle when it goes off.
Right.
They're going to go somewhere else. You got to make it difficult for them. If it's going to be a pain, unless you've got something like an Acura, NSX, or an M3 BMW that's got an interior that they're looking for, that they're really going to just keep coming back until they get it, just make it difficult for them, because they'll go somewhere else if you put an alarm in it. The most inexpensive thing to do to make your car almost theft-proof, short of a tow truck, find someone that'll install a hidden kill switch in the car.
Oh.
A little toggle switch hidden under the dash, in the glove compartment, under the seat, that'll interrupt the circuit of starting that car. Now, I don't know if you can do it with the real new cars now, with these key fobs and things, but I'm sure you can. They'll tell you no, but I'm sure if you go to one of these
aftermarket,
yeah, there's a way to do it. I mean, I always put those in my car. And living in New York, like I write in the book, it's like you get your car broken into annually.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's getting it broke. It's like getting that notice for jury duty.
Right.
It's like,
it's my time again. Yeah.
Yeah. And now I just open my mouth. I'm going to wind up getting jury duty. But it's like that. But I would get a hidden kill switch. Usually, it's probably under $200, and no one knows where it is but you. And if they get in that car, it's not going to start.
Right. That's a great thing. I had never thought about that.
I've never heard of that. That's a great idea.
I knew there were kill switches, but I didn't understand the purpose and the point. I thought they were for a different, reason, but that's actually a really smart thing.
They can rig it to the ignition, or they can rig it to the fuel pump.
Right.
And just something, that just interrupts that circuit to start the car.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. I really appreciate that. And I just have to tell you, you are so delightful. I would love to have you on to talk about anything you ever want to talk about. And I really am sort of in love with Dickheads and Debauchery. I just think that's the best title and the most interesting idea ever. So, but I'm really excited that Grand Theft Auto is coming out. So is it out yet? Because I was trying to get it on Amazon, and
I'm looking on Amazon right now. It was released on June 15th.
Okay.
And it's available right now. It's called Grand Theft Auto, the NYPD's Auto Crime Division, and Amazon seems to have all of Vic's books.
Yeah, they do. You can get all of Vic's books on Amazon. I do know that, and I'm just really grateful that you came on today, Vic, and thank you for your tips and your time. And please know you can come on Just the Tip-Sters anytime.
Listen, this was great. You guys are great. I really had a good time. And like I said, you want to hear police stories? I've got them.
We love police stories. So thank you,
we'll be back
sir.
for more of those.
Yeah. And I will not ever put a ladder on top of dictionaries again, I promise.
No, you'll be blown through a tube to get around in a wheelchair.
I don't want to be on a cover of one of your books, no.
No, that's terrible.
Thank you, Vic.
Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Vic Ferrari, for coming on and telling us about some of your stories and your time in the NYPD. And we're really looking forward to having you come back at another time and talk about more stories. We ended up talking to Vic for a long time after the interview because he's just such a fun, easygoing, authentic, real dude and just tells it like it is. And we love that. So please find all of Vic's books at Amazon. All you need to do is type in Vic Ferrari books and they all come up. And his newest one, Grand Theft Auto, what's the rest, producer Mark?
Grand Theft Auto, the NYPD's Auto Crime Division.
There we go. The NYPD's Auto Crime Division. Thank you, Vic Ferrari. And more cowbell.
And remember, if you'd like to support the podcast, visit patreon.com/just the Tip-Sters.